The courtroom camera captured something that would break the internet and restore America's faith in justice. Karen Whitmore, a 48-year-old woman wearing designer sunglasses and clutching a pristine white cane, stumbled dramatically through Judge Judy's courtroom doors like she was auditioning for a disability awareness commercial. Her performance was almost theatrical, reaching out with exaggerated gestures, her head tilted in that way people think blind individuals hold themselves. What happened in the next 12 minutes would become the most shocking expose of courtroom fraud ever captured on television, shared over 50 million times across every social media platform imaginable. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Karen didn't just get caught lying. She didn't just lose her case. What Judge Judy did to expose her fraud was so brilliant, so devastatingly perfect, that it involved a four-legged lie detector that Karen never saw coming. Literally. Before we dive into this incredible takedown of the most arrogant disability faker ever caught on camera, I need you to do something for me. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and if you've ever encountered someone faking a disability for personal gain. Hit that subscribe button right now because what you're about to witness will shock you to your core. Judge Judy doesn't just defeat this faker. She humiliates her so completely, so publicly, that Karen's face becomes the poster child for courtroom fraud across the entire internet. Trust me, the moment when Karen's lies come crashing down is the most satisfying piece of justice you'll see all year. Karen Whitmore had walked into that courtroom believing she had created the perfect scam. For 6 months, she had been playing the role of a suddenly blind woman, collecting disability payments, suing former employers, and living off the sympathy and financial settlements of people who believed her tragic story. She had practiced her blind person act for weeks, studying YouTube videos, buying the right accessories, perfecting that lost and helpless demeanor that would make people feel guilty for questioning her. She had filed a lawsuit against Barbara Chen, a hardworking small business owner who ran a family accounting firm, claiming that Barbara had fired her the moment she became disabled. Karen was demanding $125,000 in damages for disability discrimination, wrongful termination, and emotional distress. She had dollar signs in her eyes and a performance ready that she believed would fool everyone, including America's toughest television judge. Barbara Chen sat exhausted in the defendant's chair, a 52-year-old woman who had poured her life savings into building her small accounting business from nothing. She had hired Karen as a bookkeeper 8 months ago, and everything had been fine until Karen suddenly announced she was going blind from some rare medical condition that Barbara had never heard of. At first, Barbara had been sympathetic, offering accommodations and flexibility. But then strange things started happening. Co-workers reported seeing Karen driving her car in the parking lot. Security footage showed Karen navigating the office perfectly when she thought no one was watching. Karen would claim she couldn't read documents, but then Barbara caught her scrolling through her phone, clearly reading text messages without any assistance. When Barbara finally confronted Karen about the inconsistencies, Karen had threatened to sue her for discrimination. 2 weeks later, Barbara received the lawsuit papers and had spent $12,000 in legal fees defending herself against what she knew was complete fraud. Judge Judy Scheindlin had been reviewing this case file for 2 days, and every instinct she had developed over 25 years as a family court judge in Manhattan was screaming that something was very wrong. She had seen every type of scam artist, every variety of fraud, and every breed of manipulator walk through courtroom doors. But disability fraud was personal to her. Judge Judy had worked with genuinely disabled individuals throughout her career, people who faced real challenges and discrimination. The idea that someone would fake a disability for money, mocking everyone who actually lived with visual impairments, filled her with a special kind of righteous anger. She had made some phone calls. She had done some investigating. And she had prepared something special for Karen Whitmore that would expose her lies in the most humiliating and undeniable way possible. What Karen didn't know as she performed her elaborate stumbling entrance was that Judge Judy had already contacted the doctor whose name appeared on Karen's medical documents. What Karen didn't realize was that Judge Judy had reviewed the security footage from Barbara's office and the social media posts that Karen thought she had deleted. What Karen couldn't possibly imagine was that Judge Judy had arranged for a special guest to attend today's proceedings, a guest who would prove beyond any doubt that Karen Whitmore could see perfectly fine. The trap was set. The cameras were rolling. And Karen was about to learn that faking a disability in Judge Judy's courtroom came with consequences that would destroy her life on national television. The courtroom buzzed with that electric energy that always accompanied Judge Judy's most dramatic cases. The audience had settled into their seats, production assistants completed their final checks, and the cameras focused on the peculiar scene unfolding at the plaintiff's table. Karen Whitmore was putting on the performance of her lifetime, fumbling with her papers in an exaggerated display of helplessness, accidentally knocking over a cup of water that splashed across the table, gasping dramatically as if this minor spill was a catastrophic event in her difficult disabled life. She turned her face toward where she assumed the cameras were positioned, her expression carefully crafted to convey brave suffering and dignified perseverance in the face of her tragic blindness. What she didn't notice was Judge Judy's eyes narrowing into that expression that regular viewers knew meant someone was about to be absolutely destroyed. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her signature no-nonsense approach, her voice cutting through the courtroom like a scalpel through tissue. "Mrs. Whitmore, you're suing Miss Chen for $125,000, claiming she fired you because you became blind. Tell me about your condition." Karen took a deep breath, preparing to deliver the sob story she had rehearsed dozens of times in front of her bathroom mirror. "Your Honor, 6 months ago my life changed forever. I woke up one morning and everything was just darkness. The doctors diagnosed me with a rare degenerative condition that destroyed my optic nerves." She paused for dramatic effect, her voice cracking with practiced emotion. "I went from being an independent, successful professional to someone who couldn't even make coffee without help. Barbara fired me 3 weeks after my diagnosis. She claimed it was performance issues, but we all know the truth. She didn't want to deal with a disabled employee. The performance was almost impressive in its commitment to the lie." Karen gestured expansively as she spoke, occasionally reaching out as if trying to orient herself in space, her white cane leaning against her chair like a stage prop in a theater production. She described in vivid detail the challenges of her new disabled life, how she had to learn to navigate her apartment, how simple tasks became insurmountable obstacles, how cruel the world had become to someone who couldn't see. Several audience members looked genuinely moved by her story, and Karen could feel the sympathy radiating from the gallery. This was going exactly as planned. Judge Judy sat perfectly still during this performance, her hands folded on the bench, her expression unreadable. But anyone who knew her could see the subtle signs. The slight tension in her jaw. The way her eyes tracked every exaggerated gesture Karen made. The almost imperceptible shake of her head when Karen described medical details that didn't quite add up. When Karen finally finished her opening statement, Judge Judy turned her attention to Barbara Chen. "Miss Chen, what's your response to these allegations?" Barbara's voice shook slightly as she began to speak, the exhaustion of 6 months fighting this fraudulent lawsuit evident in every word. "Your Honor, I want to be absolutely clear. I did not fire Karen because of any disability. I fired her because she was committing fraud." Barbara pulled out a thick folder of evidence, her hands trembling with a mixture of anger and vindication. "I have security footage from my office showing Karen navigating perfectly in complete darkness. I have witness statements from co-workers who saw her driving, reading, using her phone without any assistive technology. I have social media posts from after her supposed blindness where she's clearly engaging in activities that require perfect vision." Karen's response was immediate and aggressive, her voice rising with indignation that would have been convincing if Judge Judy hadn't already spotted 17 different lies in her initial paperwork. "That footage is doctored. Those social media posts were scheduled before I went blind." Her voice took on a sharp edge, the victim persona slipping slightly. "Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of discrimination disabled people face every day. Everyone assumes we're faking. Everyone questions our legitimacy. Just because I've learned to adapt doesn't mean I can see." Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, and the courtroom temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Mrs. Whitmore, let's talk about your medical documentation. You submitted a letter from Dr. Michael Stevens, an ophthalmologist, confirming your diagnosis." Karen nodded confidently, adjusting her sunglasses with theatrical precision. "Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Stevens has been treating me since my condition developed. He's a respected specialist in rare optical disorders." Judge Judy's smile was cold enough to freeze water. "That's fascinating, Mrs. Whitmore. Because I personally called Dr. Michael Stevens' office yesterday. The office manager informed me that Dr. Stevens retired 8 months ago and hasn't seen patients in over a year. She let that information hang in the air like a guillotine blade waiting to drop. Would you like to revise your statement about who's been treating you?" The color drained from Karen's face behind her designer sunglasses. She stammered slightly, her confident persona cracking like ice under pressure. That must be a different Dr. Stevens. There are probably multiple ophthalmologists with that name in the area. Judge Judy's expression could have cut glass. The doctor's signature on your letter matches the retired Dr. Stevens' signature exactly. I had a handwriting expert compare it to his genuine medical documents. Your letter is a forgery, Mrs. Whitmore. A very poor forgery. The courtroom atmosphere had shifted from sympathetic curiosity to hostile suspicion in the span of 30 seconds. Karen Whitmore sat frozen in her chair, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble like a sandcastle against an incoming tide. But she wasn't ready to give up her performance yet. She had invested too much in this scam, too much money already collected from disability payments, too many other lawsuits pending against former employers who had also questioned her convenient blindness. She doubled down on her act with desperate intensity. Your Honor, I don't know what kind of investigation you think you've conducted, but I am genuinely blind. Perhaps there was a mix-up with the doctor's office. Perhaps my medical records were mishandled. But I can assure you that my condition is absolutely real and absolutely devastating to my quality of life. Judge Judy wasn't buying a single word. Mrs. Whitmore, let's conduct a simple test. I'm going to ask you to demonstrate how you use your white cane to navigate unfamiliar spaces. This is a standard mobility technique that every blind individual learns during rehabilitation. Please show the court how you would use your cane to walk from your current position to the defendant's table. Karen's hands tightened on the cane, her mind racing to remember the YouTube videos she had watched about proper cane technique. She stood slowly, making a show of disorientation, and began tapping the cane in front of her with broad, sweeping gestures that looked more like she was sweeping a floor than navigating space. Judge Judy watched this performance with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing a failed experiment. Mrs. Whitmore, that's not remotely how mobility canes are used. You're holding it like a broom. Genuine blind individuals use a specific rhythmic arc pattern that allows them to detect obstacles before physical contact. What you're doing is theatrical nonsense. The audience murmured with growing realization that they were witnessing an elaborate fraud collapsing in real time. Karen's performance was becoming more frantic, more exaggerated, as if increasing the drama would somehow make her lies more believable. She stumbled deliberately, reaching out to grab the table edge, her breathing becoming theatrical and labored. This is so humiliating, Your Honor. Having to prove my disability to people who refuse to believe me. This is exactly why disabled people suffer in silence rather than seeking the accommodations and justice they deserve. Her voice carried that perfect blend of righteous indignation and wounded dignity that had worked on every other authority figure she had encountered. But Judge Judy wasn't every other authority figure. Judge Judy had been crushing manipulative liars since before Karen was born, and this particular brand of fraudulent victimhood made her blood boil with righteous fury. Judge Judy pulled out another document from her folder, holding it up for the cameras to capture clearly. Mrs. Whitmore, I'd like to discuss your social media activity. Specifically, some Instagram posts from 3 weeks ago. Karen's body language changed instantly, her shoulders tensing in a way that betrayed her sudden panic. I don't use social media anymore. It's too difficult without being able to see the screen. Judge Judy's smile was predatory and absolutely merciless. Really? Because these posts show you at a shooting range in Henderson, Nevada. The photographs clearly show you aiming a handgun at targets downrange. There are multiple shots of you hitting bullseyes at 25 yards. Tell me, Mrs. Whitmore, how does a completely blind woman aim and fire a weapon with that level of accuracy? The silence that followed was deafening. Even Karen seemed to realize that she had just been caught in an undeniable lie. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her brain desperately trying to manufacture an explanation that could possibly account for photographic evidence of her perfect vision. Those photos are old. They must have been posted by mistake. My account was hacked. The excuses tumbled out in rapid succession, each one more desperate and less believable than the last. Judge Judy cut through the babbling with surgical precision. The metadata on these images shows they were taken 3 weeks ago. The geotag places you in Nevada. The timestamp matches credit card receipts from the shooting range that have your name on them. You were in Nevada 3 weeks ago, shooting targets with perfect accuracy, while simultaneously collecting disability payments in California for your supposed blindness. That's fraud, Mrs. Whitmore. That's criminal fraud. Karen's voice rose to a near shriek, her victim persona completely abandoned in favor of aggressive defensiveness. You don't understand medical conditions, Judge. You clearly don't know anything about disability law. Maybe if you actually educated yourself instead of just being a TV judge who thinks she knows everything, you'd understand that blind people can still do things. The courtroom went absolutely silent. Karen had just committed the cardinal sin of Judge Judy's courtroom. She had insulted the judge's intelligence, questioned her legal expertise, and dismissed her authority in front of millions of viewers. Judge Judy's expression transformed from skeptical to absolutely glacial. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of 35 years of legal experience and zero tolerance for entitled fraud. Miss Whitmore, you just made the biggest mistake of your life. But before I rule on this case, I have one more test I'd like to conduct. A test that will prove beyond any shadow of doubt whether you can see or not. And trust me, this test is absolutely foolproof. Bailiff, please bring in our special guest. The courtroom door opened, and what walked through would change everything. Through the courtroom door walked a beautiful golden retriever, her coat gleaming under the courtroom lights, her brown eyes intelligent and alert. She wore a professional service dog vest with official courthouse certification tags, and she moved with the confident grace of a dog who had been trained to the highest standards. This was Bailey, and she was about to become the most famous dog in internet history. The handler walked Bailey to the front of the courtroom, and Judge Judy's expression softened slightly as she acknowledged the dog with a subtle nod. For those watching at home, Judge Judy announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone about to conduct a scientific experiment, I'd like to introduce Bailey. Bailey is a certified service dog who works with our court system. She's specifically trained to assist individuals with visual impairments in navigating courthouse environments. We use her for demonstrations and assistance when needed. Karen Whitmore's entire body language changed the instant that dog entered the courtroom. Her shoulders went rigid. Her breathing became shallow and rapid, picked up clearly by the sensitive courtroom microphones. Her head turned slightly, tracking the dog's movement across the room with precision that would be impossible for someone who was genuinely blind. She tried to maintain her performance, keeping her face tilted in that supposedly sightless manner, but her body was betraying her in 1,000 tiny ways that Judge Judy was cataloging with predatory focus. The audience sensed that something incredible was about to happen. This wasn't just another piece of evidence or another document to review. This was something unprecedented, something that would expose Karen's fraud in a way that couldn't be explained away or dismissed as a misunderstanding. Judge Judy continued with clinical precision, her voice steady and authoritative. Mrs. Whitmore, since you claim to be completely blind and unable to navigate spaces without assistance, I'm going to have Bailey help you walk from the plaintiff's table to my bench. This is a standard accommodation we provide for individuals with visual impairments during court proceedings. Bailey is trained to guide safely and effectively. Karen's voice came out higher pitched than before, carrying an edge of barely controlled panic. I don't need a dog, Your Honor. I have my cane. I've learned to navigate with my cane. Judge Judy's smile was absolutely merciless. Humor me, Mrs. Whitmore. Consider it a demonstration of how we accommodate disabled individuals in our courthouse. Surely you have no objection to accepting help that's specifically designed for people with your condition. The handler began walking Bailey slowly toward Karen's position. The dog moved calmly and professionally, completely focused on her task. But Karen's reaction was anything but calm. Her eyes, hidden behind those designer sunglasses, were clearly tracking the dog's approach. She shifted her weight backward, away from the approaching animal. Her hands gripped the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles turned white. Judge Judy's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Mrs. Whitmore, Bailey is approaching you from the right side. Since you claim to be completely blind, you shouldn't be able to know that without hearing her movements or being told her position. Bailey hasn't made any sound yet, and I haven't told you where she is. Karen stammered desperately. I can sense her presence. Blind people develop heightened other senses. I can feel the air movement or something. Judge Judy's eyebrow raised skeptically. Air movement in a climate-controlled courtroom. How convenient. Bailey reached Karen's position and sat directly in front of her, perfectly positioned in her path. The handler gave a quiet command, and Bailey remained absolutely still, a living obstacle that any genuinely blind person would need to detect through their cane or by carefully feeling forward. Judge Judy issued her next instruction with the tone of someone conducting a crucial experiment. Mrs. Whitmore, please walk toward my bench. Bailey will remain where she is. Use whatever navigation technique you normally use. Karen stood slowly, her white cane extended in front of her with theatrical caution. She began to move forward, tapping the cane in those same exaggerated sweeping motions that had already revealed her ignorance of proper technique. But then something happened that Karen couldn't control or fake her way through. As she approached the spot where Bailey sat waiting, Karen smoothly adjusted her path to walk around the dog. She didn't bump into Bailey. She didn't use her cane to detect an obstacle. She simply walked around the dog with the visual precision of someone who could see exactly where the animal was positioned. Judge Judy pounced on this moment with devastating accuracy. Mrs. Whitmore, how did you know Bailey was sitting directly in your path? You adjusted your walking direction before your cane would have detected her presence. You navigated around her with perfect spatial awareness. Karen's face flushed red behind her sunglasses. Her voice came out defensive and increasingly frantic. I heard her breathing. I sensed her. This is ridiculous. Why are you attacking me instead of focusing on the discrimination I suffered? Judge Judy's response was ice cold and absolutely final. Because you're not blind, Mrs. Whitmore. And I'm about to prove it in a way that will leave absolutely no doubt in anyone's mind. Bailiff, hand me that tennis ball from my chambers. What happened next would be replayed 50 million times across every social media platform on Earth. The bailiff retrieved a bright yellow tennis ball and handed it to Judge Judy. Karen stood frozen, her lies closing in around her like walls of a collapsing prison. Judge Judy held the bright yellow tennis ball in her hand, turning it slowly so the courtroom cameras could capture it clearly. The fluorescent lights made the ball almost glow against the dark wood of the judge's bench. Karen Whitmore stood near the center of the courtroom, her white cane clutched in one hand, her designer sunglasses still firmly in place, her entire body radiating the tension of someone who knew the trap was closing but couldn't figure out how to escape. The audience sat in complete silence, sensing that they were about to witness something extraordinary. Judge Judy's voice carried across the courtroom with perfect clarity and absolute authority. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm going to conduct one final test. A test that genuine blind individuals fail every single time because they cannot see objects moving through space. A test that will prove conclusively whether you have vision or not. Karen's voice came out strangled and panicked. Your Honor, this is unnecessary. I've already provided medical documentation. This is harassment of a disabled person. Judge Judy's smile was colder than a Montana winter. Your forged medical documentation, you mean? The documentation from a retired doctor who hasn't practiced in 8 months. That documentation. Without any warning, without any countdown or preparation, Judge Judy tossed the tennis ball directly at Karen's face. It wasn't a gentle toss. It was a firm throw with enough speed that anyone would instinctively react to protect themselves. The ball sailed through the air in a perfect arc, captured by multiple camera angles, heading straight for Karen's head. And then something happened that would destroy Karen's entire fraud in a single, undeniable moment. Karen's hands shot up with lightning-fast reflexes. Her arms moved with the precise coordination of someone with perfect vision tracking a moving object through three-dimensional space. Her fingers opened at exactly the right millisecond, and she caught the ball cleanly, firmly, with the hand-eye coordination of someone who could see perfectly. The courtroom exploded. The audience gasped in collective shock. Barbara Chen's mouth fell open in vindication. The bailiff actually stepped back in surprise. And Karen Whitmore stood there frozen like a statue, the bright yellow tennis ball clutched in both hands, her designer sunglasses still on her face, the evidence of her perfect vision captured from 6 different camera angles in crystal clear high definition. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of the courtroom's air conditioning system and the faint whir of cameras capturing every detail of Karen's absolute destruction. Then Karen seemed to realize what she had just done. The color drained from her face so completely she looked like she might faint. Her hands began to shake, the tennis ball trembling between her fingers. She tried to speak, her mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. She had just provided irrefutable, undeniable, absolutely devastating proof that she could see perfectly. Judge Judy's voice cut through the stunned silence like an executioner's blade, measured and merciless. Mrs. Whitmore, would you like to explain to this court how a completely blind woman just caught a ball thrown at her face? Better yet, let's discuss how you tracked that ball's movement from my hand to yours with absolutely perfect hand-eye coordination. The kind of coordination that requires functional vision, working optic nerves, and a brain that can process visual information in real time. Karen's response was pure desperation, the flailing of someone drowning in their own lies. That was a reflex. That was just instinct. Anyone would have done that. Their hands would have just come up automatically. Judge Judy leaned forward, her expression absolutely withering in its contempt. Mrs. Whitmore, blind people do not catch balls thrown at them. Blind people cannot track moving objects through space. Blind people cannot coordinate their hand movements with perfect precision to intercept an object they cannot see. What you just demonstrated is called visual motor coordination, and it requires sight. The dam broke completely. Karen ripped off her sunglasses with shaking hands, revealing eyes that were perfectly normal, pupils dilating appropriately to the courtroom lights, no cloudiness or damage or any sign of the degenerative condition she had claimed destroyed her optic nerves. Tears began streaming down her face, but these weren't the practiced crocodile tears of her victim performance. These were real tears of fear and humiliation. Your Honor, please. I can explain. I made a mistake. I was desperate. I lost my job and I needed money and I just thought. Judge Judy's voice rose with righteous fury, cutting through Karen's pathetic excuses like a sword through paper. You thought you could fake a disability and get rich. You thought you could mock people with real visual impairments by pretending to be blind. You thought you could manipulate the system, exploit sympathy, and destroy innocent business owners like Barbara Chen who did absolutely nothing wrong except catch you in your fraud. Judge Judy pulled out yet another folder, this one thicker than all the previous evidence combined. Let's talk about the full scope of your criminal enterprise, Mrs. Whitmore. Because this isn't your first fraudulent disability lawsuit, is it? Karen's eyes widened with horror as Judge Judy began reading from documents that detailed 6 months of systematic fraud. You filed 4 separate lawsuits against 4 different employers, all claiming the same sudden blindness, all demanding 6-figure settlements. You've been collecting disability payments from Social Security for 6 months, payments meant for people with genuine disabilities who actually need assistance. You've been parking in handicapped spaces with a fraudulent placard. You've been collecting accommodations and benefits while living a completely normal-sighted life. Judge Judy's voice grew harder with each revelation. The total amount you've stolen through this scam is approximately $87,000. That's not civil fraud, Mrs. Whitmore. That's criminal fraud. That's theft. That's a conspiracy. That's a forgery of medical documents. Karen had collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably, her entire world crumbling around her in real time on national television. Everything she had built through months of lies was being destroyed in minutes. Her bank accounts would be frozen. Her disability payments would be revoked. She would face criminal charges that could send her to prison for years. And worst of all, her face, her name, and her humiliating exposure would be shared millions of times across the internet, making her the most hated fraud in America. Judge Judy delivered her ruling with the finality of a guillotine blade. Mrs. Whitmore, judgment for the defendant. Your case is dismissed with prejudice. You will pay Barbara Chen $5,000 for her legal fees and the time she wasted defending herself against your fraudulent lawsuit. Furthermore, I am ordering the bailiff to contact the district attorney's office immediately. You will be facing criminal charges for disability fraud, insurance fraud, forgery, and perjury. The consequences came swiftly and mercilessly. Within hours of the episode airing, the clip of Karen catching the tennis ball went viral across every social media platform. 50 million views. 100 million views. The numbers kept climbing as people shared the moment of perfect justice, the undeniable exposure of an arrogant fraud. The hashtags trended worldwide. Fake blind Karen. Bailey the hero. Judge Judy justice. Disability rights advocates praised Judge Judy for exposing fraud that hurt people with genuine disabilities. Real blind individuals shared their outrage at Karen's mockery of their daily challenges. The district attorney filed 17 counts of fraud against Karen Whitmore. She faced up to 10 years in prison and mandatory restitution of every dollar she had fraudulently collected. Her other pending lawsuits collapsed immediately as her fraud became public knowledge. Barbara Chen's business recovered and thrived, and she became an advocate for small business owners facing frivolous lawsuits. Bailey the Golden Retriever became an internet sensation, with fan accounts and appreciation posts flooding social media. Judge Judy received thousands of messages thanking her for the most satisfying moment of courtroom justice ever captured on television. Karen Whitmore ultimately pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges and was sentenced to 3 years in prison plus full restitution. Her mugshot became a cautionary tale shared in ethics classes and fraud prevention seminars. She lost everything because she thought she could fake a disability for profit and got away with it. But she forgot one crucial thing. Judge Judy doesn't play games with frauds who mock people with real disabilities. This story proves something that every entitled scammer needs to understand. You cannot fake your way through life and expect to avoid consequences forever. Karen thought she was clever. She thought her performance was good enough to fool everyone. She thought the system was too broken to catch her. But she was wrong about all of it. Real justice requires people like Judge Judy who refuse to let fraud succeed, who investigate thoroughly, who care more about truth than sympathy. And sometimes justice comes with 4 legs, a wagging tail, and the ability to expose lies that humans try to hide. Faking a disability isn't just fraud. It's an insult to every person who actually lives with real challenges every single day. It's theft from systems designed to help people who genuinely need support. It's a mockery of human suffering for personal profit. If this story of the most satisfying courtroom exposure ever captured on camera restored your faith in justice, you need to smash that like button right now. Seriously, hit it so hard your phone screen cracks. Comment justice served if you think Karen got exactly what she deserved for faking blindness. Tell me in the comments what you think should happen to people who fake disabilities for money. Should the sentences be even harsher? Should they face public shaming like Karen did? I want to hear your thoughts. And listen, you absolutely must subscribe and hit that notification bell because we're bringing you more cases of entitled frauds getting destroyed by the justice system. Next time, we're covering a Karen who tried to fake a service dog and got exposed in the most embarrassing way possible at an airport. Trust me, it's even more satisfying than watching this tennis ball catch destroy someone's entire criminal enterprise. Remember this lesson. Karma isn't just real. Karma has perfect timing, works for Judge Judy, and sometimes comes in the form of a golden retriever and a tennis ball. Don't be a Karen. Don't fake disabilities. Don't commit fraud. Because eventually, you'll face someone like Judge Judy who actually cares about truth and justice, and your lies will come crashing down in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. This has been the story of how Bailey the dog became a hero and Karen the fraud became a cautionary tale. Share this video with everyone who needs to see what happens when arrogance meets accountability. Justice isn't just served. It's served with a side of viral humiliation that lasts forever.